For years, the electric vehicle race looked like a two-player game. Tesla on one side, BYD on the other, both fighting over batteries, charging speed, and range numbers. Every few months, one of them would claim a new record, and the entire industry would talk about nothing else. But while everyone was watching those two, Mazda was quietly working on something in the background, and now, that quiet work has turned into one of the biggest surprises in the EV world this year. The most shocking part is that Mazda did not try to out-battery Tesla or out-manufacture BYD. Instead, the company doubled down on a piece of engineering that most people thought belonged in a museum, its rotary engine, and built an entire new strategy around it. So what exactly did Mazda announce? Why is the industry suddenly paying attention again? And could this actually change how we think about electric vehicles going forward? Before we get into it, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, now is a good time, because we cover stories like this one every week. To understand why this announcement matters, we first need to understand where Mazda was standing before it happened. For a long time, Mazda was seen as the quiet company in the corner of the EV conversation. It never held massive stage events. It never promised a car that would change the world in a keynote. While other brands were busy chasing headlines, Mazda kept talking about the same three things: driving feel, engineering balance, and long-term reliability. Many people assumed this meant Mazda was falling behind. Its EV lineup was smaller. Its battery technology was not making news. And its most famous engine, the Rotary, had already been discontinued back in 2012 after the RX-8 went out of production. To most of the industry, that chapter looked closed for good. But behind the scenes, Mazda's engineers never actually stopped working on it. The company kept quietly refining the rotary engine, not as a way to power wheels directly like it used to, but as something else entirely. And that patience is exactly what led to the announcement everyone is talking about now. So here is the big news. Mazda has confirmed that it is moving forward with a new rotary powertrain program, one that goes far beyond the small range extender it introduced in the MX-30. Reports coming out of Mazda's own leadership point to a dedicated rotary development group tasked with building a next-generation engine that pairs directly with hybrid and electric systems. This is not the old-school setup where a gasoline engine sends power straight to the wheels. This is a rotary engine working alongside electric motors, in some cases only stepping in to generate electricity, and in other configurations actually contributing power alongside the motors themselves. If that sounds familiar, it is because Mazda already teased this exact concept with its iconic SP concept car, a sleek rotary hybrid sports car that stunned crowds when it was unveiled. What was once dismissed as a concept-only fantasy now appears to be heading toward an actual production vehicle. And this is where the real shock comes in. Industry insiders believe this new rotary hybrid platform could underpin a future performance model, one that many are already calling the spiritual successor to the legendary RX line. Picture a compact, powerful engine working with electric motors to deliver instant torque, smooth power delivery, and the kind of driving feel that made Mazda's rotary cars famous decades ago, but wrapped inside a modern hybrid system built to meet today's strict emissions rules. If this comes together the way it is being described, it would be one of the only performance-focused hybrid platforms of its kind on the market. Now, quick reminder before we continue. If this kind of story interests you, make sure you are subscribed, because Mazda is not the only company making unusual moves right now, and we will be covering more of these as they happen. Let's talk about why this matters so much for the wider EV conversation. Every major EV maker right now is stuck trying to solve the same two problems: range anxiety and charging speed. Tesla has leaned entirely into pure battery power, betting that its charging network and battery technology will eventually solve those concerns on their own. BYD has taken a different route, building enormous manufacturing scale so it can offer both EVs and hybrids at competitive prices. Mazda's answer looks nothing like either of those. Instead of trying to make batteries bigger or chargers faster, Mazda is using a compact, lightweight engine to quietly remove the anxiety altogether, either by generating electricity on demand or by directly supporting the electric motors during high-demand moments. The vehicle still drives like an EV, But the constant fear of running out of charge in the middle of nowhere becomes far less of a concern. This approach also plays into something the entire industry has started to notice. EV sales have grown quickly across Europe and other regions, but charging infrastructure has not always kept pace. Inside major cities, finding a charger is usually simple. Once you leave those cities for a longer trip, the experience becomes far less predictable. That gap is exactly why demand for hybrids and range-extended vehicles has been climbing again, even as pure EV sales growth has started to slow in some markets. Mazda seems to have seen this shift coming before most of its competitors did, and this new Rotary announcement looks like the company doubling down on that bet. There is also a bigger, longer-term piece to this story. Mazda has filed patents connected to a hydrogen-capable version of its rotary system, hinting that this same core engine could eventually be adapted to run on hydrogen instead of gasoline, without needing a completely new vehicle platform. That is a significant detail, because it means Mazda is not just solving today's range problem. It is building a piece of technology flexible enough to adapt as fuel infrastructure changes over the next decade. Japan, Germany, and South Korea have all been investing heavily in hydrogen development. So if that infrastructure matures, Mazda could already have a ready-made engine architecture waiting for it. So how does this actually stack up against Tesla and BYD? It is important to say clearly, this is not Mazda trying to beat either company at their own game. Tesla's advantage is its charging network and software ecosystem. BYD's advantage is manufacturing scale and aggressive pricing. Mazda is not chasing either of those strengths. Instead, it is targeting the group of drivers who love the idea of electric driving but are not fully convinced by pure battery ownership yet, especially in regions where charging infrastructure still has gaps. If Mazda gets this rotary hybrid platform right, it will not replace Tesla or BYD in the market. It will simply give a very specific type of driver a reason to choose Mazda over either of them. Drivers who care as much about how a car feels to drive as they do about its spec sheet. Of course, none of this is guaranteed to succeed. The rotary engine has always come with real weaknesses: higher fuel use compared to piston engines, and long-standing questions about the durability of components like the apex seals. Mazda says its new generation of this technology addresses those problems with better materials, improved cooling, and more precise fuel delivery. But the real answer will only come once these vehicles are actually in customers' hands for the long run. Announcements are one thing. Real-world reliability over years of ownership is another. Still, it is hard to deny how bold this move is. At a moment when almost the entire auto industry is chasing the exact same formula of bigger batteries and faster chargers, Mazda has chosen to bet on an engine most people had already written off. Whether that bet pays off will depend on how well the new rotary system performs once real drivers get behind the wheel, and how quickly Mazda can bring this platform from concept to full production. But one thing is already clear: Mazda has forced the rest of the industry to pay attention again, and that alone makes this one of the most talked about EV stories of the year. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more simple, reliable explainers on EVs, new engine technology, and what the big car makers are really up to, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next one.